happening was we were just building more and more space. In 1960, we had 4 square feet of retail space per person in the US. We now have a little bit over 40 square feet. It's about 41 square feet now. We have enough market demand to support about 18 square feet per person. And that number is actually dropping because retail sales are beginning to decline, in part because of the economy, in part because of environmental awareness. People are beginning to realize, you know what, we don't really need 50 Beanie Babies, you know, we're buying too much stuff and we have to stop it. It's bad behavior. You can see that most of the growth came in the 1990s. That was sort of the decade of major big box expansion, and that's exactly what was happening there as we created all this retail space. By comparison, the UK, which has more retail space than any other country in the world besides us per capita, has 9 square feet per person, largely a result of a tax law change during the Thatcher administration. They used to only have 3. China, PowerPoint right there, has a half a square foot per person, and the worldwide average is 4. And we have almost 41. We are way, way, way overbuilt. It was sort of inevitable that it would be the weak link in the chain, the one that didn't have centralized management, the one that wasn't owned and controlled by a single property owner, the downtown, that would suffer the big vacancies, and that's exactly what happened. In its guidance to its commercial investors, commercial development investors last year, PricewaterhouseCoopers says the most over-retailed country in the world hardly needs more shopping outlets of any kind. Basically, don't put your money in commercial development. We've got too much. Another way of looking at it is in 1950, the average retail trade area of the average small to mid-sized town in the US was 15 miles. That was as far as somebody was generally willing and able to travel to go shopping or to go to work. And if you draw 15-mile radii about just about any place in the country around these towns, you'll see that there's almost no overlap. I pick on Iowa a lot because they're flat and square, so it's kind of easy to do the math, but anywhere in the country it'll work. And again, for millennia, communities have grown up a day's business travel away from the next nearest community. It just kind of makes sense. Today, people are willing to travel and able to travel 50 miles to shop or go to work. And so if you enlarge these radii, you can see what's happening. You've got communities that are basically competing with their neighbors for exactly the same retail dollars. And they all think that if they build the next greatest, fill in the blank, power center, regional shopping mall, new town center, lifestyle center, that they're somehow going to win the game and get all the sales from everybody else. It just doesn't work. It's a finite pool. I point out that there is a tiny little opportunity here just south of Des Moines. If you rush out, you can open a something and make a lot of money. So that's what kind of, gave birth to this whole sort of movement to revitalize downtowns. As if the things that were actually happening in the economy that affected downtowns weren't bad enough, communities stepped in and thought, oh, we need to do something, and started doing some pretty goofy stuff in the 1960s and 1970s, like Charlottesville building this pedestrian mall. But communities did things like think, oh, these old buildings look so antiquated, we should modernize them. Or we should make our entire downtown look like it's a monolithic blob like a shopping mall, so we'll cover it over with stuff. Or this historic preservation thing means you can pick your own history. This is a community in Georgia that went Bavarian in the 1960s. They Bavarianized all the buildings. They hired a linguist to teach their merchants how to speak with a Bavarian accent. Swear to God. Merchants got a little bit careless, sort of stopped paying attention to their customers' needs. We call these occupied vacancies. They're all over the place. We got a little bit draconian with parking restrictions. We kind of stopped paying attention to business placement, to clustering things in a logical way. So things just kind of unraveled. And over the course of a generation or two, we have created a drive-through commercial culture where people get in their cars and drive to go shopping and to do business instead of getting out on the street and meeting their neighbors. And instead of taking the time and effort that you need to cultivate locally owned businesses and support them, these are the kinds of commercial environments that we're creating all over the country. One of the 4 forces that give something economic value is scarcity or uniqueness. If there's just one of something, it's worth a lot more than if there's a gazillion of it. And downtown buildings, historic buildings, are one of a kind things. They were just built individually one at a time. You can tell by driving into a community that, from the materials used, something about the local natural resources, because these people were not gonna schlep stuff from China to build. You could tell something from the architectural styles about the period of time over which the community evolved. You can tell by the names of the buildings, something about the people who have shaped it over time. You can read the community's history in its buildings. Now, this is what you see. Anybody know where this is? Recognize it? Well, it actually is Route 50, but do you know where?
Is this the part where it's coming into DC?
No, this is actually Joplin, Missouri.
It looks just like when you're driving.
It does. How about this? Marquette, Michigan, Kansas, Massachusetts, Georgia, Kentucky, Virginia. It all looks exactly the same. I photoshopped out the name of the business and the logo. Do you know what it is?
Kentucky
What is it?
Chicken.
How about that one?
Pizza.
How about that one?
McDonald's.
Isn't that creepy? You can tell by the building what the business is. It's like buildings have become part of a corporate branding system, and we are letting these corporations scatter their logos up and down the highways and homogenizing our communities so they all look exactly alike. And we keep building more and more and more of this. It doesn't have to be this way. If we have planning and land use laws that say, you got to concentrate development here because it's already served by services, then it's not going to happen. And the big guys will, in fact, do it if you ask them to.